Hello and welcome to Manifesto-ish's Artist Talk for August 17th. The talk with Stefan Znosko, our current artist in residence. Thank you for joining us once again for, I guess, this is the third talk that you've joined us for. We had an opening for the show and you also
Yep.
joined us for our Snap Happy Talk. So we're happy to grab a little bit more of your time. So if we
I'm
want to start
thrilled to be here.
by, what's that?
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, if you want to give us a little bio where you're at now and also how you got started being a photographer and artist in your own right.
Well, you know, the question was where did I come from, basically. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'd always had an interest in photography, but it was very much the type of you know, bad vacation photo type of photography.
Oh,
I might find something interesting and photograph it so I could show other people, or maybe just remember it. I take pictures of friends and family, or maybe a cool sunset every now and then. Um, and I, you know, purchased a 35 millimeter manual camera and signed up for a class at a local school and took my first class of photography, and I hated it. And I ended up taking the second level of photography because something that I wanted to take was closed because it didn't have enough people. And that class with the exact same instructor basically opened my eyes that it was a medium that I could use to express ideas that were in my head and I couldn't get out. I've always had stories and narratives and thoughts and ideas that I wanted to share, but I'm not the most proficient writer, nor am I very good with pencil and paper or brush and paint. And I found photography to be this really great way of expressing an idea and sharing it with people that they'd understand what I was talking about. And from there on, I finished my degree, went on to a grad school program that basically made me cry every night and regret my choices. And I came out of that, and I've been teaching since then. Currently, I'm teaching at Quinnipiac University in Hamden, Connecticut, as well as Gateway Community College in New Haven, Connecticut. And I've been struggling for years back and forth, like every artist does. What's the next project? What am I going to do? And every once in a while we have bits of brilliance that people actually, other than ourselves, think are interesting. And in the current project that I've been uh, looking into and investigating and exploring has been tied directly to my experiences as an educator, teaching students, teenagers, young adults that are very much in tune with the current technologies and image making and social distribution of that uh, said medium. So that's where I am, where I
yeah.
came from.
Would you say so? I mean, it seems to me that the work that you've done for your residency is very much along. Would you say that it's born from this move towards making work that is in part towards your experience as an educator? Because I know you have talked in the past about students using Instagram and social media and how their relationship to imagery factors in when you're trying to teach them in class in the dark room or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Would you?
it's. I probably should have mentioned that I teach photography. So,
Yes.
uh, so those handful of people that maybe don't know me that might watch this at some point will
You
know
never
that.
know.
Uh, but yeah, I mean the current project. I mean, I've even called it the Instagram project several times. Has been very much influenced, very much directed, very much inspired, and kind of a way to take out frustration with the whole uh, idea and process. And yeah, I mean, directly related. Should I talk specifically about them?
Yeah, usually what we have done in the past is we've done a physical walkthrough, screen share, and I just don't trust in my ability to be able to manage all that stuff around. So people can
So
figure out opening the window to your gallery and walking through it, I think. So,
if you
you know,
go to the virtual art space gallery,
they can do a
you,
little work.
you will
Um,
have an understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So two of the primary projects that you have up in your gallery right now involve um, how would you put it, the filter project, and like how would you speak a little bit about the two kind of bodies of work you have up in the
Yeah,
gallery, and we
absolutely.
can go from there.
The filter project, which really is what I originally was calling the Instagram project, was directly inspired by a student. I won't name him or her, uh, but it was directly inspired by a student who I'll probably make a mistake and refer to them as a he or a she at some point and give it away. But it was directly inspired by I had a student who insisted on um, adding a filter to um, for lack of a better idea of why, kind of, to beautify their images, to make them more appealing, more accessible, maybe making them more like what everybody else was doing. You're more likely to be part of the group if you're like them, type of mentality. And um, it was really, I never really looked at Instagram. In fact, I signed up for an Instagram account just to explore this kind of foreign world to me, of photographing one's breakfast and lunches, and maybe something interesting we'd find on the sidewalk. Um, and I was really started thinking about what these filters, how these filters were actually impacting the intentions of the photographer, the intentions of the person using the camera phone or tablet to record something that they thought they'd like to share with people. And and I was being, an artist and being a teacher and being interested in techniques and technologies to a degree. I wanted to deconstruct the process, deconstruct what Instagram actually did. And it's pretty obvious that it formats everything into a square, rather than the typical rectangle that photography has maintained and held on to for quite a long time. Um, so I wanted to look at that, and the first thing I thought to do was, how do I look at what Instagram does visually to an image, other than actually seeing it for myself and seeing it firsthand. And that first part of the project was really applying each filter to a blank canvas. I did try uploading just blank Photoshop documents versus white Photoshop documents, but the results were the same visually, but I found the programs and the applications seemed to like a field that actually held information versus one that was nothing. And I started to realize that there was kind of this weird forbidden beauty about what these filters that were constructed by, I'm assuming, a human being, um, and probably in a program like Photoshop, and then we as people just randomly sometimes apply them just for the sake of aesthetics. And I found myself very intrigued by that, and very kind of found it very alluring, very interesting. And I don't know, it just kind of went from there. And then that project is really, I don't they're not photographs. I don't consider them to be photographs. I consider them to be pieces of art, but not necessarily what I would define as a photograph. I think I originally even applied the hashtag not a photo, or never taken to the whole group, which got me some interesting responses from people. Not that I have an Instagram following or anything, but as it stands right now, those are the only images on my Instagram account. So I feel bad for those people who subscribe, follow me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where it was in a nutshell. And it was, I just found it interesting to really explore, this idea of, taking a, an idea, with my background with photography and really seeing it as a way to share an idea with somebody else, and taking this original idea that, I want to really share this with people, and how instantaneous it can be, and gratifying it can be to a degree. I found it kind of creatively disturbing that, an individual would take a photograph that would be their creation and then just kind of arbitrarily just apply something to make it look more appealing. And that was kind of the the couple weeks of exploration I did when I first discovered Photoshop.
Yeah.
Oh, I can filter this, and look, it's a mosaic now, or it's a stained glass window, and it was fun and it was interesting, but it got kind of old. And once I realized that, friends who had been using the programs for years and were like, oh yeah, I know exactly what filter this is, for me then it lost a lot of its appeal. And it's interesting that Instagram and the filtering process and has been so prolific and such a following. And I think it's the Met, or maybe it's the MoMA, that has like a special social networking photo guru now. I hate that. I'm sorry I used that word. Can we erase that? But they have people looking into that, and it's Instagram and these social programs are getting attention from established art venues and establishments. And I think it was the Memphis Museum of Art that actually just had a recent Instagram exhibit where they were all submissions from viewers. And I think that having a problem with that can easily be taken as kind of being a little elitist, or, well, I went to grad school and you didn't, kind of idea, or I earned my chops. But I don't look at it that way, and I apologize if it does come across that way. I really look at it as, you as someone who's creating something and sharing it, are losing some of the integrity of your work by applying these preset programmed filters to something and showing something in a way that's socially accepted, and versus showing something that the way you want to show it. So
yeah, one thing you had mentioned, either during our opening or during our Snap Happy discussion, was the idea of authorship. So
yeah.
you as you said, you have a set image that you've taken, that obviously that involves you point the camera at something, you've made choices, and then then someone else has created a program, and then it's like, so is that creator of that program or that filter part of that authorship? So I guess my question for you is, so your filter project is all filter, no pre-existing content. So I was wondering if you felt like you were the author for those projects, or if you succeeded in creating an artwork using filters that you wouldn't attribute to belonging to the people who created the technology, or I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense, and it's something that I've thought about, and I've actually resisted calling them my work. They're definitely things that I've assembled or put together to exhibit as one thing, kind of the artist as curator type of idea. In a way, they're almost found objects. I guess I'm probably misusing that, but I don't know that they're mine. I know that I'm the one that decided to do this, and but a lot of times that's really all that it's the only requirement for a piece of art anyways. So, just being the first person to do it, or, turning a urinal upside down and putting it on a pedestal, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good connection or to like ready-made art,
Yeah,
virtual ready-made, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's a very strange idea. I think it's a potentially kind of a slippery slope. I don't know that I'd want to be the one to have to defend it to a panel of
Yeah.
art-oriented art critics. Um, Definitely not in a court of law. Um, but I don't know. I mean, and it's funny. I was just reviewing a little um, article. I call it an article, but it was just a little basically rantings about visiting the ICP in New York's triennial last year and being kind of taken back by it. And to be honest, that probably was a big influence on this whole project in its own right. It's the International Center of Photography, and it's their triennial, and I think there were maybe two bodies of work that were actually just straight photography. Everything else was screen grabs or collages, or there was even a movie in the exhibit. And I mean, there were alternative printing processes too, but I actually consider those to be more along the lines of actual photography. But and I'm not trying to discredit or discount or say anything is not art. I'm just saying that I think calling a lot of things photography is maybe not the right term for it. Maybe it's more of a it's a new media. It's a mixed media. It's a mixed digital media. And I think I kind of forgot what the question was. But yeah, no, it's just interesting to see what we consider to be art. And there was also a lot of work there that was and even the screen grabs and things like that are kind of like that artist as curator. And that kind of been wondering and thinking if that's maybe where art is going, at least for the time being. I mean, when you get to the point where everybody can take a photograph, everybody can, everybody who has a cell phone practically in the world has a camera on it, and they can all take a picture, and it's going to look better than if they picked up a manual SLR camera, and take it themselves, knowing why things are working. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get people, instant artist type of thing. You just add technology, and now you're an artist.
That's definitely been, it seems like a struggle for photography from the get-go between, especially as cameras became more accessible.
Kodak box brownie.
Yeah. So continues to be something that, I don't know, that that is attached, I guess, to the field. And I mean, I kind of am with you in terms of, I guess it drives me crazy as someone who paints. I think painting is also a term that a lot of people like to attribute to something that doesn't involve paint.
Yeah.
Because to me, it feels like you're talking about a specific media. When you say painting, I'm thinking tubes of paint. But I guess you can say paint a picture, and it doesn't actually mean, you can use that in a non-specific way. But I don't know. For some reason, that's always bugged me, so I could see why, like, people call themselves photographers if they don't have a camera. Like, is it the camera's not involved? Is it photography?
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
It's really weird, and I actually found myself defending the Google Earth screen grab, images. It was, I mean, when I do a screen grab, my my computer actually makes a shutter sound. So, yeah, you're selecting, you're choosing, you're picking, you've got an intention that you're looking to get across to people. so I found myself not really being able to say that potentially that wasn't photography.
Mm.
And this actually maybe would tie more into the last project that you guys sponsored, but I mean there are people who go around video games and do screen grabs as photography. Some of the more violent ones, they're kind of they kind of dub themselves crime scene photographers, going after somebody had a big shootout or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's a strange it's a strange media. Um, and what you're talking about, photography's always had this problem. I mean, and I interrupted you. I apologize. But the box brownie, Kodak's box brownie, took photography out of the skilled technician who was an artist and put it in everybody's hand. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening now, with iPhones and those of us Android users. It's available to everybody, and it has some people nervous and they don't know where to go with it, and it has me nervous sometimes too. But I don't always consider myself a photographer. In fact, I don't like to not. I've actually chosen to just refer to myself as an artist, because when you use a tool or device that is used in other fields, when I tell people I'm a photography teacher or I'm a photographer, I get well, you can take, can you come over and take pictures of my baby? Or can you do my next, family photo? And, it's nothing against, anybody who's a professional photographer, professional commercial photographer or wedding photographer or event photographer. I mean, it is definitely a skill set, and it's definitely, there is an art to it, but it's just not what I do. So it's hard to make that distinction. I mean, in some ways it's like, this is I'm probably going to get hate mail for this, but it would be like, somebody asking you as a painter to come paint their house. I mean, they're both, you use the same tools. It doesn't mean that, your butcher should perform your next surgery. So I don't. It's weird. I mean, it's definitely hard to not sound like, an elite jerk.
It's also a thing I think that happens with artists in general, people asking for free services, where it's like, well, this is technically the thing that I do, and like if it's your life's passion or your life's work, and to have someone ask you for not only the thing that you don't do, that to also ask you to do it for free, I guess, becomes this whole other weird thing, and you don't want to get up in arms with a friend or an acquaintance, but it's like, you don't really get what you're really asking for when you
ask. I mean, I would never ask, one of my photographer friends to, just bring their camera and, just take photos and not offer compensation to some degree, And I actually, I don't even remember the source, but I found an article about that specifically. And, there was this accountant who posted in the comment sections, well, I give free tax advice all the time, at parties. And it's like, well, yeah, you give free tax advice, but you're not, I can give advice on a camera all day.
You're not doing someone's taxes.
Yeah, you're not doing their taxes for free,
Yeah, so. It's very different. So I do think it's interesting, though, that, with all these kind of still lingering, I don't know if fear is the right word, but just a feeling of, like, it sounds like you're still not entirely sold on the whole traditional use of Instagram, right?
I don't think I am. What's that?
Do you feel like your feelings towards Instagram changed through this project?
They probably became more critical.
So the thing that's kind of interesting for me, at least for me, is that even though that, like, that kind of, criticism is there, and that feeling of like, I don't know about this technology, that you were able to create images that it sounds like you're pretty happy with, like in terms of the filtration project.
I really like
That, yeah, like you're saying, like some of them are very atmospheric. Like there was one piece specifically, I felt like it felt very tactile to me, even though I knew it was completely virtual. So
Do you
it is
remember
kind
which
of
one?
nice. What's that?
You remember which one? I'm sorry.
I not off the top of my head. It was like one of the more cream colored, kind of grayish
Yeah, no, I
images.
mean, I think I was probably getting the same vibe from those, which is why I chose those ones. Uh,
Yeah, so you're able to create something that obviously this technology needed to exist to create these images. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting that it's like, as much as I dislike this technology, I was able to, like you were able to create, something good out of
something interesting.
something.
Something. In some, I mean, I really do look at this, as it's probably this is a rough statement, I guess, to say. So don't, if it comes across severe, please don't hold me uh, to it too hard. But I feel as though these are probably the most honest Instagram photos, or probably the most. I used photo. Probably the most honest Instagram images ever to existed, in my mind. In my opinion, which isn't worth much. Uh, but because they're showing you what what you're really getting. They're showing you what the to a degree, showing you what the intentions were of the programmers or the designers that created them. And I don't I guess I could make the argument that they are mine, because Canon doesn't own my photographs that I take. I'm using their technology. I'm using, their equipment, and I'm creating something new from it. Adobe doesn't own the photograph that I edited. I mean, I'm using their technology, and I kind of, this is just a different technology that's being used, and so yeah, they're mine. Deal with it.
No, I would
No, I know
concur
you
with
were.
that.
I'm talking to the
um,
virtual
yeah,
audience.
but I also think it is an apt, statement you made that I wouldn't consider these photographs either,
Yeah,
because they're the purely, because I don't. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
There's no. So we should move on to. I think that a good segue would be to talk about your disaster series, and then we can
yeah,
talk more about, the effects of Instagram, because I think that, because you're starting with pre-existing images, it kind of leads into the way, Instagram is definitely traditionally used, I suppose. So,
yeah.
um, if you want to talk a little bit about that project, and we could kind
Sure.
of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole project, because I'd been thinking about Instagram and its effects, and um, finding myself as an educator getting perturbed is probably the best word when students would present obviously doctored images and such, and having to be more sensitive to it, not sensitive like I'm going to go home and cry about it, but sensitive to actually recognizing it when I see it. um, I I there was that explosion in Harlem back in March or April. I really should have had that article open. Um, and I wrote about this a little bit on the blog, and I actually have the date there, I think. But when that happened, I had found out about it after the fact. I think I was in class when it happened, and I, go out to my car, and it's on the news, and they didn't quite know what the explosion was that leveled this multi-story, building in Harlem, and so people were pretty nervous at first, obviously, specifically because it's New York, and that, in the world that we're currently living in, we're no stranger to acts of terrorism. People were very nervous about it, and really trying to get as much information as they could. So obviously, the media is trying to get as much information out as possible. I'm not going to mention fear mongering or anything like that. Not to tarnish the reputation of any media outlet source to try to scare us into watching or reading, but they were taking the eyewitness accounts of the explosion, and these eyewitness accounts and images and videos even were being uploaded and sent to the news agencies, or probably just hashtagged to them. And I immediately noticed when I got home and looked on the news website that one of the images that they had up was clearly filtered by some program. It had a very it was looking like a very 1970s type of type of emulsion or processing, and I, for a brief moment, forgot about the tragedy that it just happened to all these people, and the possibilities that it was something more than just an accident, and got briefly enraged by the fact that the news was using clearly manipulated images as a representation of fact, a representation of an event as it happened, a document or a record of something that's happening or happened to other people, and that I very quickly found out soon after that it was a gas explosion, and that it was not a terrorist attack. And I think I started a project that afternoon where I just randomly grabbed the least horrific looking images of tragedies that were that people would think of, and just began applying filters to them. And that first round of those were just Instagram filters, and I believe it was actually you that pointed out that not people who are maybe not so familiar with Instagram and the specific filters maybe wouldn't pick up on the fact that they were filtered, and that led me to the work that I did for the residency. That led me to actually use other processes to try to make it more evident, clearer that there was a manipulation. And that whole project is really rooted in the the ideas that our memories are not perfect, and we remember things to be one way when they were clearly another. And a lot of times we use photography to supplement that memory, or to assist it, and those representations are already not true to how things actually were. I use the example a lot of you look at a photo of a family picnic and everybody's smiling and looking at the camera and happy with their arms around each other, and 10 seconds before that they were just having a knockdown, drag out argument about something that families argue about. And the reality of the situation, that everybody was miserable for half the day, but the photograph is showing us a clearly different picture. And it's one thing when it's a personal situation or issue like that to want to remember things as well as as in the best light as possible, but but when we're trying to remember events that are locally, globally, nationally important, things that are actual history of us as a people, Um, we kind of need those to be as accurate as they possibly can, and you know, really started making me, question how people were going to remember these specific events, and also got me wondering why somebody looking at something horrible and tragic to other people would take the time to try to make it prettier.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and actually, when I was researching and revisiting the Harlem, explosion, I discovered that some of those manipulated photos were actually taken from the New York Fire Department's own Twitter feed. And going back through their Twitter feed, it's not the first time, nor was it the last time that um, filtered, beautified images of somebody's house burning down, or you know people being rescued out of an apartment, were being taken presumably by a firefighter in New
Oh,
York
geez.
and
Wow.
having the HEF filter slapped on them, or throwing a toaster on them and putting them up on their Twitter feed.
Yeah.
And I
It's
mean,
very
are we
fun.
that callous? Are we that you know are we that unaware of it? I don't know. I don't think I could answer that.
I mean, it's beyond me to take because I think that and this is something we talked about during the Snap Happy discussion for myself, that in terms of my personal desire to take pictures of anything anymore has definitely dissipated. So
Yeah.
the idea of taking a picture of something, especially as something, that is potentially, people in distress or, destruction,
Dying.
and then filtering it and sharing it with the world is beyond me, because I haven't even been taking pictures with none of that nonsense. But I mean, so this kind of leads us into, so you've picked a range of different sorts of disasters in history, from like the Hindenburg to, and did you actually include the Harlem explosion in your in the
There
show? I
is.
can't remember.
I did put one in there, and we discussed this, I think, during the opening to a degree, or maybe it was before the opening. I don't remember exactly when it was. Um, I had actually made other ones that were basically all of the events that I picked were accidents or acts of nature or God, or however you want to look at it. There wasn't an intent by human hands to do harm, at least not readily evident. I mean, you could question the Princess Diana crash photo, I guess, with the paparazzi. Um, but they were all something that happened, and could it have been avoided potentially, in the 3 Mile Island image, or maybe some of the others, but they weren't willfully done. And I had actually created some images that and this is one thing that, in my opinion, a lot of times artists who end up becoming a lot more successful than me kind of lose, is kind of a conscience of what they're willing to put out. And I had created some images that I thought really sold my point, but I was not comfortable with the image or sharing it. There was one I had done of, and I actually even had posted it to the blog, and then taken it down. One was of one of the towers burning to the ground, and the other one, the plane as it was about to impact. And I mean, right now, I mean, I'm, hair standing on end, and maybe it's because I was old enough to understand what was happening when 9/11 happened. Um, Maybe not, but I just wasn't comfortable with with getting this idea across with taking a hit to my own personal conscience, on that, and I didn't feel responsible. I didn't feel like I'd be a responsible person, I should say, to put those out, regardless of how powerful or thought-provoking or enraging they might have been. I wasn't happy with myself. Um, so yeah, there was definitely a conscious choice to choose the type of events that I did.
Mhm.
I specifically avoided in the tsunami pictures and the flooding pictures. I very cautiously chose images that would show that there something tragic and horrible had happened, but um, to tried my hardest to pay respect to the people who lost their lives in those things, and not post images that were overly explicit or graphic. It's just me. Not everybody would do that for whatever reason, but
Well, I see like two major things happening with this project, and I think that I can understand not wanting to feel like you're using a disaster to benefit you, obviously, but to further your work, whatever. But you're addressing a trend in terms of the technology, people, news sources and other sorts of media sources using this technology in a
yeah,
way, and the implication of a filtration on top of that, using a filter and using filtered imagery in a news source to cover. It's like there's a sort of amateur aspect, amateur reporting thing that's happening. I know at the Boston bombing, I don't know that they used filtered images to report
I
on
didn't
that event,
look
but they did use still images
yeah, they
from,
did.
amateur images. So there's that aspect. And then there's also, so before we started, we were talking about Instagram and this kind of instant nostalgia that happens with the technology in terms of
Yeah.
depending on the certain filter you use. So you use a blend of different events. Some are definitely so when for me, like when I think back to some of these disasters, like I do think of a certain period of time, and there is not a nostalgia for the disaster, but maybe a nostalgia for the time period.
Yeah.
But but you have something that happened this past year, and then things that have happened, like
100 years ago.
decades, and they
Yeah.
all kind of get put into this big kind of nostalgia ball, or past life ball, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I've been thinking about the idea of this. I'm definitely not the first person to say it. This instant nostalgia, because nostalgia, you're longing for, a happier past. And reality is that happier past didn't really exist. Um, so in a way, these images that are being modified to give this kind of nostalgic, imagery to. I guess it could be defended in there that nostalgia could work because it didn't really exist either, at least not the way it's being seen. But there, I, I don't know if we just find images from the past to be more appealing or not, and I think it's definitely tied to nostalgia. But I mean, we're really, we've always been obsessed with beauty and making things more attractive. Um, but we're really in this time frame where um, everyone can do it. Everyone can make a beautiful image of everything from their breakfast to the train wreck that they saw on the way to work. I mean, they're we're really it's so easy now to make an appealing or an attractive image. And there's probably a really interesting study in there to find out if these types of filters that create these types of effects are more popular now because of programs like Instagram making them more popular. Do you know what I'm saying? Kind of like feeding into itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and an article I read was, a photographer, an artist, really frustrated that these grainy, blurry, washed out images are now popular because when they were actually working with those types of emulsions, they would do everything they could to remove those effects, to keep things looking accurate, to how they actually did, and now we're kind of embracing in a way, the decay. I mean, a lot of these effects weren't actually the way they were when they were taken as they are now, and now we're applying these filters that are adding 30 years of sitting in a cardboard box to an image. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's just interesting. I mean, it's kind of weird what we find. Um, Kind of weird what we find uh, attractive. A little side note, and I'm not going to mention this former student's name, but a student I had last semester actually thought that the word vignette was taken from a filter from a photo app program, and not actually understanding what it meant to have vignetting on a photo. Um, the rest of the class made them understand how silly they were. So
No, you didn't have
I
to.
didn't say a word. I think I maybe put my
Um,
hand over my face and
oh no. You're
just
just like,
asked somebody to explain it.
someone goes, shh, someone else. You go. I can't.
I let somebody else.
You
Yeah.
handle this. You let your peers handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me it feels a little bit like these filters are kind of like like filtered photos are kind of like distressed jeans almost.
Yeah. Buying acid wash jeans. Yeah.
Yeah, and in part because I mean, I don't know if the part of this like this technology is cropped up because when if you have something that's a digital photo and maybe you don't print it out and it's just going to exist in your computer, maybe it'll be more pixely than photos you take with your newer digital camera, so that might be a distinction between one photographic period of your life, digitally photographic period of your life, and now, but otherwise it's not going to age, and there's like this desire for it to age. So there is no cardboard box, I guess, for your digital images, so
It's a
until
box.
it,
That was something else I was thinking about when I was mentally preparing for tonight. How when one, I think there is a distinction made when the decision is made for the use of the filter. I had a former teacher, now colleague, professional artist, argue to me that the use of a filter was now actually a valid form of expression added to the image, and I would be hard pressed to argue that in a certain way, especially after my filter project. Um, but it made me start thinking about specifically when the decision was made to apply each filter, and if there's questioning if there's a distinction between looking at something and going, oh, this would look great with the toaster, filter applied to it when I take it, so I'll take it and purposely use that, or if the decision is made after a photo is taken, and if that is somehow different than using the filter as your decision, or making the decision to actually photograph something, or using the filter after to just enhance it. And there is a distinction in there in my mind. I don't know that I'd be able to argue it right this second, very soundly. But I think I'd find that the filter applied after the fact would maybe be more valid of a form of expression, rather than letting the filter guide how you want how it should look, versus letting the image direct you to which filter maybe made it look the best. and another thought that I recently had about this whole idea of nostalgia, you know, um, is that when we apply this kind of, false or faux nostalgia to an image, this virtual shoebox, in the attic or in the closet, um, in a way, and you kind of were addressing this. We're kind of robbing, you know, our history of, our future history of being able to look back at something and remember it, from that time period. The digital image doesn't degrade, if you're lucky, um, but and it's not going to start to yellow. And even if you do print it, they say on archival printing processes are good for 100 to 1,000 years now. But is it going to have the same effect looking at photos of your baby that your newborn baby 10 years from now that you applied Instagram filters to, as if you had just taken the photo and you go back and look at it as it was? I'd be curious to talk to people who maybe had maybe even that specific example happen to them.
I mean, I suppose if, as technology changes and moves on, I mean, who knows how long Instagram and these filters are going to be a part of our life. Maybe that in and of itself becomes the marker for a time period. And it's, even though it's borrowing from another time period in some ways, it's still like maybe that will be the thing. Like, remember that Instagram and how like everyone wanted to do all this stuff to their pictures? Remember that? Like, look at these. But I definitely tend to want to kind of go towards like a less filtered kind of version of past. So one other thing to cover. So one thing we talked about before we started was the, as you put it, the spiral of disappointment created by Instagram.
Yeah.
If you want to cover that a little bit, and then maybe we can wrap up.
Well, yeah, and this isn't even my idea. I just found it very interesting. There's an article. Let me see if I can pull it up. How basically, and it's from it's a Slate article. Basically, the idea that Instagram and Facebook makes you a more miserable person because you get caught in this this kind of one-upmanship, this instantaneous one-upmanship that now has actual quantifiable, in the form of likes or follows or hits or retweets or whatever you want to call it, upvotes. You look at your friend's picture, and they get, maybe it's a picture of them on vacation, and they get, 100 people saying that they like it, or their Facebook post about vacation or something, and they get 100 people posting about it. That you then feel bad that partially that you maybe were not there, and that your life isn't as glamorous possibly as theirs. You're looking at your friends' pictures of Cancun while you're sitting in your office at work, and it actually, this constant beautification creates this what did you quote me as, or what did you say? This
is a spiral of disappointment.
Yeah, spiral of disappointment, which again is not my term.
Yeah, it's good.
But I don't think it's mine. Maybe I did choose that way, but you're constantly wanting to be part of this life that you think is better than yours. Keeping up with the Joneses. No, I'm not going to refer to that other family with the K last name. Or feeling like you're left out of something. And this article and this study basically were saying how things like Instagram are far more damaging to your self-worth than potentially things like Facebook because of how instantaneous it is to look at an image and get something from it versus having to read through your friend's boring post. Um,
Oh yeah.
you know, and this was all directed to me. This was kind of the last stop on of the links from that article about ways of seeing, the John Berger, um, originally film and then book, that images are instantaneous kind of thing, and that it takes time to read. So that's why images are so powerful for us. And when you're constantly competing with people that you don't even have contact with, you're constantly feeling like their situation's better than yours and becoming more and more miserable. So if you're miserable,
Yeah,
that's
I
today's
mean,
life lesson.
my question for you is,
Yes.
I've noticed that for myself, since both artists and have artist friends, I know that I follow down the spiral. I spiral downwards when
Yeah.
I'm happy for a lot of my friends or acquaintances who are always posting about their art things and their art projects, and I'm not
Just
very
had my
good about
first solo show.
posting things, and I'm like, oh, I'm losing. I'm like behind. I always feel behind,
Yeah,
and
and that's
that's not how it
yeah.
is. Like,
No, it's not. And I mean
oh
that's what we go through. We do that to ourselves, not even intentionally. It's
no.
like yay, I'm gonna use somebody that we both know. Yay, Veronica had another show, but I didn't.
Yeah,
And
I mean, and it's like people who we're all, like a community who wants to support each other, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like a little pang of, "Ugh, I'm not doing, like, because I'm not posting all of my things all the time. Like, I
I'm a
have a
big
lot of
fan.
work I've made that I've never taken pictures of, that I've never put online, and now I feel like they might as well not exist, is how
Yeah.
I feel. And it's
Yeah, I
like,
mean
how
I've
do you
got
like that?
I mean photography in inherently you have more work than you're ever gonna show. It's all about the edit. I mean, you flip through a monograph of somebody's work, and they've got 100 beautiful images that are mind blowing, and bring you to tears page to page. But what you're not seeing are the hundreds of thousands that never even made it past the first contact sheet or anything like that. I totally think I talked over your question about that. Do I go through the same thing? Is that what you're?
Have you noticed that? Have you been a party to that sort of thinking? I guess.
Yes, I've been on the depression spiral, or the whatever,
It gets
uh,
worse and worse. The
yeah, it,
depression.
it definitely can be bad, especially. And then I don't know about you or other artists who maybe watch this or are watching this. Hello, um, but it it's hard to make work when you're feeling pressured to make it sometimes, and not have it be, you know, just a rehash of something that you've done in the past, or um, just be kind of like you know almost a wasted exercise. There was a time period where I was just done with thinking about photography, done with making photography. When you talk about it all day long with students, and they're stuck, so you need to come up with ideas for them to get unstuck. You kind of lose your ideas. Um, and just I've talked about this in the past. Everybody has setbacks, and some of mine were directly related to my art. Um, and then you're like, oh my God, I got to show, I got to show, I got to show, I got to make work, I got to make work, and then you just kind of go through the motions, and it doesn't help. It actually makes it worse, and and those are definitely those days where on Facebook you get the question from Facebook, why do you want to hide this article? Is it offensive? Yes, but not for the reasons you think.
It makes me feel bad about myself.
Yeah, it's like, yes, I know I'm really happy for you for your 400th show this month, but in your trip to Europe that was paid
Oh,
for by the gallery, but I don't need to hear about it all the
no.
time.
It's making me feel bad. That's why. Not because of anything they did, because of my own
Well, it's
insecurity.
funny. It's funny. I purposely won't watch the news because it makes me feel bad about things that I can't do anything about. Now I realize that happy things make me feel bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, though, even with the art posting and all that stuff, it's again, like people are showing, edit what they post, so you're not getting all the like dank. Well, a lot of people do use Facebook to garner, pity. So, many people are like, here are the great things that are happening, not like here's
Yeah.
all the really horrible things that have happened. So it's there's an editing that happens. So, whether it be about art shows or you're feeling like, you're begrudging someone their like 2.5 kids and beautiful home and whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm like still renting and I have no life,
Yeah.
There's it's edited,
Yeah.
everything.
Totally edited. And
So,
that's what that's what Instagram is. It's a instant happy edit. It's a make it look interesting to the viewer for some reason or another. And if it reminds them of pictures of their parents when they were younger, or maybe of them when they're younger, if you're as old as I am, they are getting satisfaction from the work that is really it's intentional, and it's exactly what program apps and programs like that want, the designers, but it's not connected to what they're actually doing. We're not really stoked that you've had bacon and eggs for breakfast this morning. We're hitting like or whatever because we think it looks cool, or we think it's interesting. I even had a discussion with students specifically about Instagram, and them saying that what's the other, in the website Flickr too, that they'll hit like not because they actually like the image or even that they like the person, or they'll upvote something just because it was just like, oh, that's neat, click, and it really, it makes you start to question, why do we as individuals, weigh so heavily on, oh, how many likes did I get on my post, and why did I get more on this one, or why did I do this, but really, why do companies and corporations think that a lot of followers or a lot of likes on something is going to translate into something financially successful? There's an interesting article out there, The Power of Like. I don't remember who it's by. Just Google that. It's the answer to everything. You don't need to know things anymore. Just Google. But
it seems like the least amount of effort you could possibly put into supporting something would be to like the like button.
Yeah.
It's like the minimum effort. And
Yeah.
I mean, it can be worth something to some people, but when I like to put a lot of stock in it, though it does feel good when you know that a bunch of for at least, especially for Manifesto-ish, in part because this is a communal endeavor, I get very excited when we have a lot of likes on something, because it means that not only are they supporting Manifesto-ish, but they're also supporting the artists that have given their time to contribute. So in that case, I'm kind of like, yeah, but then who knows what it's worth? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You have to remind yourself not to get bogged down. I look at lots of things that I think are interesting that I can't be bothered to click that button.
Yeah. This is interesting. So let's see. We got any other thoughts? Yeah. I mean, I think that the Instagram thing, in terms of the speed with which you are supposed to generate content and post content, also I think can affect, at least myself, how I feel about my own pace of art making. I don't know if you felt that way at all, in terms of, because things are so sped up, sometimes if something, be it a drawing or a painting, is taking a long time and it doesn't feel like it should be, it, I don't know, the rate of production seems like it feels like it should be shortening because everything is so instantaneous. And if you're not, producing at a certain rate, it's like you're just going to get left behind. I think
Yeah,
that's an Instagram effect.
yeah, I've definitely thought and experienced that too. And then I just kind of said, there's no way I'm going to keep up. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to keep up on it. There's no way I'm going to ever possibly that make as many photos as a 13-year-old girl can possibly take of herself in every situation that she goes through all day long. I'm not going to get a billion followers. I'm not going to get an endorsement from Nike or Canon or something from an accelerated pace and of art making. And my grad school specifically pushed the idea of content, like something deeper, the critical theory, the intentions of the artist beyond, to some degree, and I'll probably get somebody yelling at me for this, but to some degree even beyond making the work or the quality of the actual image, that the intention is really what drives a project, and some shameless self-promotion. I'm currently working on a very photographic project where I am going to places that people have claimed to see something unusual, be it in the sky or maybe on the ground or whatever. And I'm just going to these locations and I'm just photographing the city block or photographing the house that I think is where the people thought they were sitting or something like that. And they're the quickest, basically the quickest photos I think I've ever taken. I find the location, usually when you're pointing somewhat fancy camera at somebody's house and they notice it, they get a little upset. So I try to do it kind of quick, and I'm just making these very simple images, and it's really just all based on now the idea that this location now is more meaningful because somebody said they saw something here. And it's more that whole project, it's really, yes, they're my photographs and my photography, but it's really more about what the images are signifying, what they're showing the evidence of. So there's some of those up on my site, so check it out.
I have a really important question.
Yes.
Are you going to cover the Mothman? Are you going to go to West Virginia?
I did recently go. No. I did a cross-country trip, and I intentionally stopped in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, where something was rather verifiably crashed in the woods, and then taken out of the woods by government people. And I basically drove up to somebody's farm, and in the back of it was a wooded area where this thing crash landed, and I just photographed the wooded area. So yes, the Mothman might be on there at some point soon.
Please, come on. So that's your website is just stefanznosko.com.
Yeah. Right now, don't put the wwws in there because
I
got to get that straightened out. But yeah, it's just myname.com.
So you should check that out. Definitely, I'm very intrigued, and that kind of like goes back to when we were talking about the Instagram filters, the idea of intentionality. So just to like kind of bookend that. If you could find a way to use that technology, with the whole idea is to be intentional. So so many people it feels like using it with not a lot of thought. It's like, this is cool, this is neat, is kind of the extent, instead of like, what is this filter really doing, or what is, like really thinking about the technology. And that might be a way for that to be, a quote-unquote legitimate endeavor. But I see, as you said, intentionality, I think, is the kind of distinction, I think, between some of these pieces. If
you're going and photographing the the house you lived in the 70s with a very 70s, inspired 1977 filter, going and photographing that and revisiting that, and one of those recreation photos where people get together, and here is us now as adults in the same place that we used to go camping as kids, as a family.
Mm-hmm.
I can, I think that might be one way to do it, to really, showcase it. I don't know. I don't know. I think the using the filter intentionally to showcase the filter. I don't know. I kind of feel like I kind of did that to a degree, but not really with the you don't. But I definitely would concede the point that you don't get that nostalgic vibe from just the filter. I think you maybe need to have something to induce that sense of time frame for that, or use that really your intention is to use the filter to do that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. One thing that has gotten me in trouble a few times is that I probably the best or worst devil's advocate for my own arguments that I can use. And I will frequently argue somebody else's point more than I'll argue my own. Sometimes it works at my advantage, so I can actually prove my point to be right by disproving theirs. But I don't know. I think I could see an argument for both ways, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember what my question was. There was like a pseudo question in there.
There was a statement.
I'm such a good moderator. So we're in about an hour 15. So let's do a little wrap up. Any final thoughts? Any final information that you would like to provide? I mean, things you would like to plug while we're here, or
if people want to check out those sightings photos, there's some of them up on my site. There will be more going up hopefully soon when I upgrade my subscription, and they might actually be part of a local meat space exhibit, to me anyways, which could be cool. So I will definitely let you guys know about that if that happens. I'm really appreciative of the offer to be involved in this. For me, the entire thing was a success. Even if it's just you and I talking to each other right now and for this talk, and that's the total viewership that this ever has. As an artist, I'm sure, it's a lot easier to make work and stay on target when there's a deadline of some kind, or something or someone to be accountable for. I mean, anybody who's gone through grad school knows that, your weekly or monthly check-ins, you're more productive when those are coming than when they're not. So, I mean, it's really been an honor, and thank you to you and all of Manifesto-ish for the invite, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great experience.
We appreciate your time and involvement. And again, for those of you who have sat and watched this full hour and 15 minutes, you get a prize. No, you don't. But you can check out the residency at stefanznosko.tumblr.com and stefanznosko.blogspot.com. Those links are on the manifesto-ish.com website, which is probably where you're watching this, so you can probably figure all that stuff out. It's on the Artist in Residence tab, and the exhibition is on our gallery page currently. So you should probably look at those things. And yeah, what was that?
I was just saying, go look at that. Sorry.
You should look at it. Do it. So yeah, we really appreciate, we had you on for our Snap Happy discussion, and some of what you're talking about really seemed like something that we, could kind of you act as a platform for. So it's nice to, like have these. This is why this place exists. So, thank you for being a part of it. That's why, without you, we couldn't do the things that we want to do. Because we'd just be, making a bunch of 4 people doing things in a little vacuum, which is very easy to do, but not the point. All right. So thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful evening.